This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Spartan 117. Welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. Anthony and Skylar will take it from here. Master Chief, out.
Hello and welcome to Koality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. I'm Skylar Sokol.
And I am Anthony Nicolosi.
And today we are here, finally, after long last, to talk about Doom. 2016.
Doom. Yeah. Yes. Finally freaking beat it. This will be part of the conversation, but I was like, I stopped playing it right literally at the checkpoint of the final boss. Spoilers, by the way, if you want to play Doom 2016, you don't want to have anything spoiled, you should not listen to this episode.
True.
If you've already played it or you don't care, listen away. And I'll start with this. The very final boss, Mr. Brain Boy. I thought he was going to be like a big boss based off of the fact that I was referencing him against the two previous boss fights, the Cyber Demon and the two Crab Boys, the Hell Crabs. And so I was like, oh, this one's going to be like 3, whatever. And it's true. We'll talk about the interest curve thing that you mentioned when I brought this up earlier, but it turns out he wasn't that.
I mean, it still took you 10 minutes to beat it, right? And if you had died, It could have expended a lot, but you didn't die, so it worked out.
Right.
I'm just curious. Can you check your total playtime in Doom?
Can I just like look at Steam?
Yeah, just in Steam it'll show.
Will that be accurate?
Yeah.
14 hours.
Okay,
14 hours.
Cool. I just wasn't sure. So yeah, it took me 10.8 hours. So you just had 3 hours of shooting your pistol extra.
Yes. What a conversation starters that is. Yes, it took. That's a good. I think you also said. I think you said once in chat that the average was like around 11 hours to beat the campaign.
Yeah.
So, I'm definitely slower than most. And this brings up, I guess, let's start there. The first point of interesting conversation for me, I will start by saying I played on PC, but with a controller because I am still quite the potato with keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, we'll start out with the control scheme discussion.
I personally feel like that was a big differentiator in my experience of Doom compared to in certain facets of Doom compared to like what you had brought up and what others brought up specifically. I think the ammo usage and weapon switching in particular was a big thing.
I mean,
for me.
Doom's like major appeal, right, is this huge variety of weapons that you can use, all this like crazy fun shit you can do, and the ease of access to those weapons is such a big part of that, in my opinion. Being able to like shoot one, jump in the air, switch to whichever one you want, shoot again, without like a break in the immersion is really valuable to my enjoyment of the game. And on controller,
150%.
that's just not possible. Do you want to describe like how the control scheme works and like what that looks like?
Yeah, 150%. Totally agree with you. Because on controller, for you to switch a gun out of... So you have like the two primary, right? Like in a normal shooter, for those who haven't played Doom, especially if you're a console FPS player, you have your like press Y to switch between two weapons dynamic going on. But Doom has a fuck ton of guns. I want to say it's like 10.
I think it's 10.
So... And they all have different like places within the sandbox. There are certain use cases, like depending on the enemies that you're fighting. We'll get into all of that. So switching between all 10 of those guns is, I would say that generally I felt like in a given firefight, the game was communicating to me to at least use 5 of those guns.
Yeah, I would generally use like basically all 10 in every fight. Like
interesting.
Every time you got into one of those long form fights where there were enemies that kept respawning, whatever, until you killed them all, I would end up using pretty much every gun, if not make like maybe a main 5 with some supporting other ones. Yeah.
Right. So because I feel like some of the heavy ones, like the heavy Gauss cannon, to some extent the rocket launcher, the chainsaw, were some that I use like not all the time, kind of a thing. Anyway, to get to those weapons on controller, you have to hold down Y, and it opens a radial menu, which actually slows the game down to a complete halt if you hold it long enough. And I didn't really test this, but I never was like kicked out of the radio menu, if you will. Like I could just hold Y and hold it there.
Yeah,
and
it's basically like pausing the game. Yeah.
Yes, it gets to that. It's like it kind of curves, right? Like it's got a little bit of a slowdown effect to it. But yeah, at the end, it's like basically standstill. And my goodness, does that play completely in contrast to the rest of the experience of Doom?
Right.
Like
this like fast-paced metal music is bumping, and then it pauses the music too, doesn't it? It slows it down.
yes, the whole thing.
Yeah. So you're just like, and then you're like,
Well, and in my opinion, the A fucking plus 105 out of 100 part of Doom are for me were these set pieces where you'd kind of go into this big room with geometry that you could jump on, run underneath on, jump over, like jump between, whatever, and they just spawn a fuck ton of demons, and you just basically fought them all and killed them all until you cleared the space and moved on. These were my favorite places, and often, especially as you progress in the game, you're just moving 110 miles per hour, switching between guns as these, you have one enemy that's a big fat slow one, and you can siphon his energy from him to recharge your health. But then you've got these small little dudes who are charging, running up at you, and that big ass motherfucker, the guy with the white head, who is like running at you. That you have a dynamic there. You have the stupid ass witch who teleports around and shoots you from far away. Like you are, it's crazy. There's a lot of tons of action, and pulling up that radio menu is just such a buzzkill and like such a so what ended up happening to me most of the time is I would like go into a moment, if you will, in the fight based off of the guys who were like currently in the room. I would switch into my two guns I would want to use right now, maybe like a shotgun and a heavy assault rifle, and I would try to avoid having to bring up the radio menu.
Right.
Now the problem for me was, because I did that, I would essentially deplete the ammo on those two guns, and then switch to new ones, right?
Or not. So I saw you a lot of the time just deplete the two and then go to your pistol, because you like, it seemed like in your brain, right, because it was so stupid to get to all these other guns, you basically only had two guns, and once those were out, you were like done, right? You were out of ammo.
150%. Great way of summing up the process, the thought in my brain. It's so stupid to bring up this radio menu. I'll just use the two I have. And I'll prefer to just have a pistol and another gun. That way I don't have to bring up the radio.
Right, because the pistol is the only gun with infinite ammo.
Yes. For what it's worth, for those who aren't aware, you have infinite ammo on the pistol. You can buff it to a certain extent, but my goodness, you just need to watch 2 seconds of Doom gameplay to realize that it is like this wimpy, like a good example is like, if for those who have watched Men in Black, it's like the noisy cricket, except it sucks and it doesn't shoot shit.
Yeah.
And you can like charge it up. Compared to all the other guns in Doom, which are just badass and shit, it's a loser gun. And oh my gosh, I used it.
You used it so much. It was so
and I think that's a big part of my fucking 3 hours
I
longer than average.
When I said I think you spent 3 hours extra shooting the pistol. Like that's where those hours came in.
100%. So yeah, you were saying for you it was different.
Yeah, so
you
PC,
just roll through.
Right, on PC, like you can scroll the mouse wheel to change weapons quickly. You can just, each one is mapped to a number key, so you can just click the number key you want of the weapon. So you can switch basically to any weapon at any time with one button press, right? Like that's such a big difference to what you were describing.
Well, and you have the mouse wheel too.
Right, exactly. There's multiple options for switching between weapons.
And there's not even a radio menu.
I'm sure there's a button to bring it up, but I sure never did.
Okay.
Or if I did, it was like in between fights.
And so I would say, related to this, in Doom 2016, at least, we're not talking about Eternal yet. You to recover ammo, you can do a few things. You can do what's it called?
An execution,
like glory execution kill, whatever. That gives you some ammo. That gives you some health. In addition, the main way to get ammo is outside of like drops on the floor, like little pickups, is using your chainsaw,
right? Which
in Doom 2016 has ammo. It's got fuel that you can and you can only, to kill some of the big guys with it, you need to have enough fuel to be able to. It takes like 3/4
of the total fuel, stuff like that.
Yes.
Yep.
So for me, the chainsaw, first of all, was yet another thing to manage the ammo for. I'll tell you, there are some of those pickups on the map that I still don't know what the fuck they filled up. like I would just run over everything and be like, it's got to be a positive thing for me to run over this.
Right.
So I felt like when the places that made a lot of sense and obvious for me to use the chainsaw was like if you go up to those spaces where there's a lot of the easy like walking zombie dudes who are, you know, no danger at all. I was like, oh, okay, the game is telling me pull out my chainsaw here and get some ammo, you know. Although
I never used it on those dudes.
What would you use those dudes for? In out of curiosity,
just execution. Just execution.
Did you also
kills.
see it as like a health?
Yeah, as an for execution kills though, not for chainsaw for me. I used the chainsaw to kill enemies that were annoying.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I think they're called imps. Those guys who like throw the fireball. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're kind of the base enemy, if you will, in
they're
in
one
a lot
of
of
the
these
first enemies you see.
Yeah, and those were other guys that sometimes I would use chainsaw on. But I'll tell you, I basically rotated through pairs of weapons through my weapon wheel,
right, and
depleted the ammo up, and then only would really have the think like, oh yeah, I should pull out my chainsaw now when I like from my perspective. And I think part of this was I was maybe playing on a difficulty that was too easy for me, but I felt like I could just handle the situation with another pair of guns than like, you know, refilling the ammo for another one that was probably the optimal weapon to use for that encounter.
But yeah, potentially.
So
I don't know. I saw you a ton of times open your weapon wheel, have like full ammo on like 4 or 5 different guns, that pull out your chainsaw and chainsaw something, and then all of us in the chat would die.
Well, sometimes I just wanted one gun to come back, you know, like
right.
I wanted like the plasma, what's it called? The plasma rifle?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll move to that. Let's talk about the guns just in general. Do you have a favorite weapon now looking back on the game?
Well, I first will preface this answer with saying that, you know, you have the weapon mods.
Yes, right? yeah. Including that, I guess, part of the discussion.
Yeah, so that's going to be part of my thing. You can, as you go through the game, for those who don't know, you can get mods for your weapons, and it gives them new firing options and all that stuff. Damn, overall, I would say the one that feels like the most satisfying to shoot is the heavy assault rifle for me, I think. The
I
one
also
that has
really
the
like the heavy assault rifle. I got the aim down sight upgrade, actually, first for that gun. I really enjoyed using that as well. I got the micro missiles
not get
later.
That upgrade at all.
Yeah, it was fun because you could get like really good headshots from far away and do like a fuck ton of damage to weak spots from far away. And since there was no real like sniper rifle kind of gun, that sort of, and I like that kind of like gunplay, sniper rifle kind of gunplay. So that sort of replaced that for me in a way in some situations.
Yeah, what did you think about? Because I think the shooters that you at least usually talk about, and I think you usually play. I don't know. You don't play a ton of shooters most of the time.
Not generally. Although BioShock Infinite and BioShock, my favorite games of all time, are shooters. Right. So,
but like more recently, you've played Valorant.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very different game from a movement perspective.
Yeah,
and a lot of things.
And I didn't approach this game with the same mindset at all. Right? Like,
did you enjoy Doom?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Because this one, the thing I loved about this one, similar to Halo, is there's no hip fire penalty. Like there were benefits of using some of the abilities, right? Like you just pointed out the aim down sights one. But like I said, I didn't have the aim down sights one. I think you're completely capable of going through the whole game without having that. Yeah. And hip firing your way through the whole thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that like hip fire even really existed in the game because the majority of the weapons only had one like fire state, right? Yeah, it's not even right. There's only one gun that even had a zoom in option.
Right.
But yeah, so the assault rifle's sick. I really liked the minigun chain gun thing. That gun was really
the big
fun
one
to
you
use.
pull out that's like boom, 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 boom,
that
boom,
rotates. Yeah. I loved using that gun. I liked using the rocket launcher, especially once you get the lock on that shot the 3 rockets.
Yes.
And also the plasma rifle. That shit was super fun. That could freeze the enemies. And when you freeze enough, if you do the challenge, I don't know if you ever did enough. You had to like be pretty methodical about it to do the challenge. I can't remember what it was, but you had to use something with that ability to do the challenge because for all the weapon mods, there's a challenge upgrade where if you do this thing enough, you get an additional benefit with that weapon mod. So
I did not know
for
that.
the plasma rifle, once you get the benefit, when you freeze an enemy and they die, it freezes nearby enemies as well. And so it like spreads the freeze, which was super fun to use. And
Nope, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Yep. I thought it was again the way so this is maybe spilling a little bit outside of just the weapons themselves and getting it a little bit into the enemies and the enemy design and the AI
let's move
design.
to that, yeah.
The encounter design. I think I told Skylar this on stream. There are the ammo thing and the switching between stuff on controller was like didn't feel awesome to me. And that's one thing. I didn't enjoy some other parts that we'll talk about later, but holy shit, the encounter design, like the AI design in tandem with the sandbox design and the character movement and everything, fucking phenomenal.
Yeah,
like,
it felt really
plus.
good. The design of the environments plus like where the enemies were spawning. There were the only negative I could say is there are some situations you could get in where there were like just a few enemies left and you like couldn't find them. Like you had to like run around looking for them and find that like last enemy. That was a little annoying. But other than that, I think the design was so good, right? Like,
right.
It didn't feel as much like, you know, some games where like each enemy waits its turn to fight with you. Didn't feel like that. Like it gave you the feeling that you were fighting with more enemies. And I know we've talked about the ticket system they used before in how the combat worked. And I think that really paid off here. Like it made the combat feel so dynamic and really interesting. Yeah.
I think on top of that, like we said before, and everybody knows, if you know Doom, it's a 150 miles per hour game. And they did such a good job with the enemies on communicating with the animation sequences and their firing like sequences. They were so easy to read, understand, and work a plan around. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you when you died, I don't think I ever died in that game and felt like what the fuck just happened, if you know what I mean. When I did die, it was like, oh, I remember there's this one sequence you're like you start the sequence by falling down onto some rocks and then you have to jump over the rocks a few times. And there's the big guys who float demons.
The big eyeball guys,
The big eyeball guys.
I think they're called beholders.
Okay, there's like 3 of them that spawn and they come at you. And I remember I died like 6 times there because like I wanted to die there. Yeah, I was like, I don't think this is a big deal. Basically, I didn't think it was a big deal and I could just go through and pistol it. And really what it was I think it's like kind of like a little puzzle. I ended up like plasma rifling one and then like taking that one out, then the assault rifle, whatever. Like when I died, I didn't feel like, whoa, what's going on here? It's cheap. It was very like clear that I wasn't getting it. I don't know how to explain it to you. It was always very understandable what was going on, how I was losing, what the other enemies were going to do. They were easy to read, and their difficulty in a lot of cases, I would say there wasn't really a demon that was hard 1v1. It was their difficulty was when they were within these scenes all next to each other, and that they all kind of had this unique role. You had the beholder Cyclops boy who had this like air, and he's almost always right getting closer to you. At least like within a certain range, he starts getting near. And actually, I think that's one interesting dynamic that I'm trying to think most of these guys have. Maybe that one sniper dude doesn't have it, but almost all of them are always like going at you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, or like moving around you in a way too, like the teleporting, like the guys with the missile launchers and the jetpacks. You know those enemies, the like tall dudes. Yeah, those like move around you, sort of.
Yeah, those are the main ones I was thinking in that teleporting witch lady thing. But the other ones are always kind of like moving at you.
Once they see you, at least once they like know where you are, they
right.
start approaching for sure.
And that like pushes you towards that like running around and shooting them gameplay. You know what I mean? It's not like we set up, for example,
take cover behind this one wall kind of thing.
Right, kind of a thing. Or that they're taking cover. They're just coming out and they overwhelm you with sort of their dynamics of there's the imp guy who can also scale up a fucking pillar.
Yeah.
So like you might have a given situation where the imp's going up the pillar at you and he can throw a fireball. there's that big fat guy who's strolling down with his like green radioactive toxics thing through the middle, and you have the Cyclops boy coming from the right. So the difficulty is like in that given circumstance is also with the weapons. Like what weapons do I want to use in this situation? And this is like also where it's like if I went into that situation with a pistol and a shotgun, my first thought is like I want a plasma rifle to deal with the Cyclops guy, and maybe go to the heavy assault rifle for the imp, and then I'll siphon grenade the fat dude. Those are all things. They might be all things that I don't currently have equipped. So that's radial menu and all that stuff. So it sucks, like that part sucked. But once I did, and I'm fighting them, it's fun as fuck. It's like super fun.
So on the positive notes, let's continue down that before we get onto the bad stuff. So let's talk about the music. What did you think overall of the music?
I liked it. I mean, yes, I liked it. I really liked it, and I thought it obviously complemented it super good. Although at times I did feel like I don't know, I was expecting more uniqueness, if that's the right word, at certain points. But anyway, it
may
was
have been because you were in some encounters for abnormally long because of your pistoling too, potentially. So maybe I don't know if you're talking about that, like a individual song felt like it was getting repetitive, or
the other thing could be like I was saying on those radio menus, it kills everything. It
does totally,
including the music. The music doesn't keep playing; it all goes no. So fucking lame. So like it's not their fault. It's not its fault. I'm thinking about what they could have done to do that better. I think the only alternative there was like on a controller you could just spam Y to get to weapons.
Or just not release the game on console. Easy. Fuck those shots.
Well, even like I said, I played on PC, but like those controller players, you could say we don't support control. That's another conversation we could maybe have, especially after the Ghost Runner thing. But yeah. So outside of that, it was badass, dude. And the game is about being a badass. Great job.
Yeah, the music just like bumping. The tempo of the music, the pace of the music, I felt really matched like the pace of the 100%. Gameplay. Really good way. The way the music like stopped when you finished an encounter was like very cathartic. I thought the way they used music in the game was great, and the sound design in general.
I was going
to
say,
game was
generally
fantastic.
The sound and audio was really good.
Yeah.
Between also like the the animations,
graphically, just in general, the graphics are amazing.
Yep, the graphics were super good. I mean, that game is now approaching 5 years old,
right? Like, that's crazy. It's 2016, 4 to 5 years old game, and it looks
that thing could release
good
right now and look wow, you know,
right?
So
move over, Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
No, super good. Super smooth. Like also, we're not talking about some of those other things because I think it just like came with it. Like super smooth gameplay from a technical perspective. I thought it was a masterpiece. The animations were super cool. The fact that you could blow up, like these are things that I think you kind of take for granted, and it's just like an awesome game. But the destructible limbs and shit, like they didn't have to do that, and a lot of games don't do that, and they did it great. It was always fun. At least personally, like to see how I was going to blow up the guys with the gore kills. Oh, and those were done, I thought, well. They weren't slow enough to bother me.
Yep. And
they were also cool. So for me personally, that was another plus.
Yeah, they were fast and cool, right? Like that's if I'm gonna have some sort of execution that's gonna happen a lot, it better be fast. And they managed to make them really fast and still really satisfying.
Yep.
All right. So now we got to talk about it. Got to talk about the platforming section.
You know what's interesting? I thought about it. So first of all, I did not like it. Oh my gosh, I didn't like it.
Right. This includes just that platforming section where you're climbing is the big one, right? Where you're climbing up that big area. There's also the sections where you have to like find the skulls and take them to the right places. Those sections I think are included here. Just the general non-combat like interlude sections that weren't narratively driven. Because I thought the narratively driven ones were fine, right? Like where you're finding the pillars.
Give me an example.
Like where you'd find the pillar that would give you the low talking voice guy and give you some shit, or the things where you were like seeing the memory cutscenes, right?
Side note, the voice effects they did on some of the characters, so fucking I loved it. That guy's voice, the here's the story
Yep.
about blah blah. And then Samuel Hayden's how they affected it, loved it. You know, like
Yeah, I knew you would like that shit.
They were all super cool. But
anyway, platforming. Tell me about
platforming, yeah. So yeah, there's the general thing of these interludes between the game, the fights, and I feel that there was a level towards the end where that stopped being a thing as much. Like, I want to say it was like 3 levels from the end. Those final 3 levels, you didn't have as many of these interludes. I felt like it was more just fight to fight to fight to fight, which I
you
loved.
had to do the skull finding stuff at the end.
Maybe it was because the skull stuff, like
I actually got lost on one of the skulls, and it took me a long time. It actually was really
close to the end.
Annoying.
Close to the end.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't find it because it was obvious from the very first location where you're supposed to find it, but I missed it then, and then if you miss it then, it's so hard to go back and find, and that fucked me over for a while and was really annoying. But I thought the platforming, the jump mechanics felt good, right? Like we talked about, the movement felt good, but it wasn't so good that it was satisfying to just do that, right? And that's the big problem.
Yeah. Doom did the auto clambering.
I know,
and I've talked about it before.
Fan.
Not an auto clambering guy, and I felt like a lot of the platforming sequences, it wasn't optional. You know, you sort of just jumped at a platform, having your head it felt like your forehead's hitting the thing, and you auto clamber. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. I am more of a fan of the manual clamberingness.
Right.
What happened? We froze?
Just Discord froze, but it's okay. I can still hear you fine. Oh, there. Now it's fixed, of course.
It's okay.
Anyway.
I took the time note.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, yes, the platforming, the first thing, the interludes between the fighting sucked for me personally. I understand maybe, especially for other people, that was a nice relief, from an interest curve perspective. You have these very intense sequences where you have the fights going on, and it's nice to have a bit of a downtime between the next one. I hated that. I wish I would have just fought those things over and over and over again. I would have loved that. And on top of that, if it was not for the stream on a couple of occasions, I would have fucking been there forever finding out where to jump to or where the fucking skull was, especially early on. Like I said, I felt like the earlier levels had it more. Like the first half of the game had more of it.
Totally.
Maybe they didn't, but I did not like that. Like shit. I did not like that. I don't know so you kind of said already what you felt about that section, those sections. What do you think they were a good idea though? No,
I mean, I think if the movement was more fun, yes, but I don't think the movement itself was satisfying enough, right? It's no Ghost Runner, right? You can't slide and wall run and grapple hook and do all this crazy movement shit, right? Maybe if some of the weapons doubled as giving you some sort of movement ability differences, then it could have been more interesting. But
which, interestingly, I think they do in Eternal. I think there's a grapple hook shotgun or something.
Right, yeah, and if that's the case, that could really add to it, I think, right?
It
just wasn't dynamic enough. It was literally just run and jump. Look for the green lights, run and jump. That's not fun. I'm sorry.
Well, and dude, it wasn't it wasn't that, it was like a puzzle. It was not super. There was that one section where you're I want to say it's you're in a room where a train thing is passing by, and there's a window up there that you're supposed to go through. I remember that being a time where if the stream hadn't told me, and I'm glad it did. I'll say this. There were several points in Doom where I was I don't need to keep playing this game.
Right.
And those were them. I felt like I had fun in the fighting sequences. I had experienced it, and fuck your platform.
I gotta defend the word puzzle here. I don't like that whenever you have to think about something, you call it a puzzle, because that was not clever enough to be what I would call a puzzle. That was literally. I
wouldn't call that very clever either.
It's not, it's just I don't even know what it is. It's not even a puzzle. It's just a tedious activity they made you do.
Yeah.
Because it didn't require thinking. It just required randomly walking around until you saw green lights.
That's true.
That's not that's not a puzzle. What even is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I did not like it, and I did not care for the go find the skull to open the store. I'm sure it adds time to the game, and
maybe that was a concern because some people still care about that.
maybe,
I don't know. Anyway,
I want to say that it was more from the perspective of they realized that the game is so fast paced in its battle sequences, and they wanted to have some like slower moments
I could
between
see
it.
that, but the narrative moments were enough for that. I felt like, right, like where you had
Yeah, I agree.
the blue ghost cutscenes or found a pillar and it talked to you. Like those moments were plenty for me, right? That was plenty enough of a break for me, and those were nice. But like the platforming shit, no thanks.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
Of those narrative sequences, real quick, because you mentioned
Uh-huh.
them, I feel like there were two main kinds of them that
Uh-huh.
I stumbled upon. There's one, there are these like stones that the low voice dude
That just
talks,
talks to you, right?
and then there are these like holographic moments.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I personally, as cool as that guy's voice was, I don't think I stuck around to hear any of them except maybe the first one.
Why in the world they made that voice fade away when you walked away? I have no fucking idea. That was such a
Yeah.
bad decision, right? Like even if it didn't make that much in-universe sense for you to like hear the voice forever, you're in like this magical hell universe. Maybe like hitting the pillar made him be able to talk to your brain. Like I didn't.
Although that is, yeah, they I agree with you. They could have easily come up with a reason that you heard it,
And then you can hear it anywhere, so you didn't have to. Because like, of course, why would you want to stand there and just listen to audio?
I'm not sure.
I-
I was like thinking maybe it's because when they were testing the game, there were sequences where like you could press, because I got to think that's harder to do than just playing it. Like having a radius of sound from
Right.
a spot, but like having it, maybe they found during testing that like if you play it, you could run to a space that there's combat before the thing finished talking, and that was janky. Maybe.
That's fine with like I would be fine with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This happens to a lot of games that have audio logs. Like I just like Ghost Runner, for example. You can find these secret audio logs, but you have to go into the menu and play them in the menu, and you can't leave the menu and keep playing the game while you listen to them, and that just annoys the crap out of me. Like
Halo 5, yeah, Halo 5 actually, now that I think about it, it's like lore drops within the campaign were like this stone thing. You press play on it when you found it and it would play right there. I don't know, maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, and that one actually did play while you moved, which made sense. It's like a chip the Spartan puts in. But the point I initially was trying to make was, for me, the voice only right there without having something else wasn't captivating enough for me
No,
to stick around.
not at all. And that's why I said it should have moved with you, because why would anyone stick around?
Okay, yeah, because right, like I thought hearing it was like as cool as the way this guy's delivering it, and even as interesting as it sort of some of the content was, within the lore, from the lore perspective of things, like whatever of who Doomslayer was, what he was doing. You probably had to give a shit about the lore to stick around. I feel
Even more than that, though, right? Like you had to give a shit about the lore more than you wanted to keep playing the game.
Right. The holographic thing was more of just like, I think the visual element made it interesting enough to like, oh, what's happening, what's going on.
You can't walk away from something visual and still see it, so like it makes way more sense to have you stay there.
There's one thing, if I would have come up to a stone that was talking about the sacrifices that the corrupted evil lady was doing, and then there's another thing if I walk into the hologram and she's, stabbing people in the chest for a service, whatever.
All right. So, gotta wrap this up. So, final question is,
okay,
what is your top 3 wish list for Doom Eternal?
Oh, so shit.
I'll go first. So my top thing would be, I want the gunplay to feel like the same, if not better, right? Like I want as much weapon variety, hopefully new weapons that weren't in the first game, and I want like new ways to interact with them. Like wouldn't it be cool if like you could shoot one gun and then if you used a different gun on some element of what you shot with the first gun, they like interacted in somewhat? Like, that'd be sick. Just saying. I doubt that's in the game, but like I just want more of that same gunplay. I hope that just like gets better. They didn't like overthink it and make it worse. Number 2, I want either no platforming sections or way more interesting platforming sections. Like I want them to be fun and satisfying, because there can be fun and satisfying first-person platforming. See Mirror's Edge or Ghost Runner, any of those games. So I hope it feels like that. And 3, I want better narrative delivery, because like we just talked about, I think there were a lot of moments where in Doom, like the narrative just wasn't delivered that well, so it wasn't that interesting to follow. Like you basically just realized that lady was kind of evil and that she was still evil, and then in the end, yep, there she is and she's still evil. And oh look, there's these big monstrosities that aren't even really mentioned in the lore, and those are the bosses you're fighting. Who are these guys? I don't know. Right?
Yeah. That's, from my perspective, the fact that they kept it sort of simple for the game is a good thing almost for me, but I do agree that though, especially those stones, man, like the things they were saying, I didn't feel like I needed to be a lore expert to understand, were interesting, but I just, quite frankly, in a game that's all about being a fucking Ferrari, didn't want to just stand there for 5 minutes.
And I don't even think the story was like that exceedingly simple. I just think they delivered it poorly enough that it came off that the memorable elements were just the simple ones, honestly.
The memorable things that I come away with, the main one is being in Samuel Hayden's office and he's talking to you. That's the main like thing I remember of the game experiences, and Vega talking to you about how she's, you're gonna blow it up.
Yeah, destroying Vega. The Vega like computer destruction part was great. I thought that was like probably the strongest narrative moment in the whole game, from like just like a narrative design while you're playing gameplay perspective. That was really good. Like I think you like feel for Vega. You're like, this is kind of fucked up, but is it fucked up because they're a computer? And they really do like address that and like make you think about that while you're still having fun playing the game, rather than like making you stand at a pillar to hear that.
Agreed.
You got anything in your top 3 that differs from mine, or anything else you can think of?
Top 3.
I'm assuming you probably agree relatively with mine, but
yes, and I won't even say the second part, because your second point, because from my perspective, it needs to be as good as this holistically. Okay, and I know that's kind of general, but it has to be as good from my perspective. And yes, holy shit, please, like the same thing on platforming. I won't even count that. Yes. I just hope that the moment-to-moment experience of the gameplay for me as a controller player, I know that's unfair to them, but I hope that somehow it's a little better.
So are you planning to play with a controller? That was the question I wanted to ask.
Well, this is what I'm thinking for Eternal. I played on like the normal difficulty, Hurt Me Plenty, and I felt like the battle sequences were too easy. I did take a long time, but like we talked about, I was fucking fighting the big dudes with a pistol.
Right. You didn't die that often. You just took fucking forever to beat them.
Yes. So I would prefer to try Eternal like at a harder difficulty, but at a harder difficulty is going to be even harder for me to play on mouse and keyboard. I felt like I would have probably, like, that's really frustrating. If I play on mouse and keyboard, something that if I would have played Hurt Me Plenty, I would have died way more. I think, right? It's true. Maybe by switching more weapons, I would have been better. So I just, like, I want to try Eternal on a harder difficulty, and so I feel like I need a controller to do that personally. But maybe I will give it a try.
We're going to have to find some game to convert you. And I do think Doom is a good option, because I really do think it's intended to be played on mouse and keyboard.
Here's the frustration. I like playing on mouse and keyboard, the shooters, and I like playing Doom. But it's frustrating to be like, I can do this so easily if I just pick up the fucking controller.
Totally.
And then, like, so it's like if I told you to go play Halo on a controller, you're like, well,
I went to my friend's house once and played Rainbow Six Siege on a controller, and I wanted to like blow my brains out. I was like, how can you have fun doing this?
Yeah. So, admittedly, I think mouse and keyboard is enjoyable. It's not a question about it being good.
It's just the learning curve.
Right. And it's frustrating from that perspective. So
where can people find us?
Yeah. Sorry. Real quick though, my top 3. I would say that improving that moment-to-moment situation with the gameplay with the controller would be 1. 2, I agree with. I would be interested. Here's the thing. I know some things that are in Eternal. The infinite chainsaw. I'm interested in experiencing, because I feel like that could change my experience. There is that grapple hook, and there are these like things you can jump on and swing on. They're like monkey bars around the level.
So you're spoiling the game instead of making a wish list.
And you have a thrust. So I'm super excited for that stuff.
I didn't know you knew so much about it. I know like literally zero going in.
Yeah, I for a while now, ever since I saw things, I'm like, God, that looks awesome. But I just hope that as a Halo fan who has had the core gameplay sort of broken by mechanics in different ways over the years, I hope they don't break shit with the new shit. That's
fair enough.
That's a thing. And finally, I hope that the music soundtrack's even more epic. And I'm actually concerned because I know that there were some issues around that with Mick Gordon and all that stuff. But I hope the soundtrack and the audio is even more epic. Those are my three.
Tune in like probably January 2022 when Anthony finally beats Doom Eternal, and we'll have that podcast.
I do want to try it sooner. And yeah, maybe I'll do a Hurt Me Plenty normal, but on keyboard and mouse, and then maybe try and work up.
I would love to watch that. I mean, I think it would be great for your future PC FPS adventures. Anyway, where can people find us?
You can find us at kokoalaentertainment.com. There you have links to all of our social media. Discord. Come join us on Discord, where the community is at, where you can start to get first little itsy-bitsy tidbits about the lore of our upcoming game through the idle game that you play inside the Discord. Get research, get to level 6, get automatically entered into epic giveaways that we do every 3 weeks. Just a ton of goodness. On top of that, you can find links to all of our social media, normal like Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, where we do giveaways and do cool shit and funny content all over the place. Also, in addition, today we launched our Patreon. It is full of tons of fucking value. We especially, good Lord, if you're international, you actually technically make money in value off of it. So yes, join up. We have 3 tiers: $2, $5, $10, $5 and $10. You're getting free merch at certain intervals. On top of that, if you're a Koala Manjaro fan, Sandsquid was in the chat here on Twitch. He is the first Koala Manjaro subscriber. He's going to appear in the credits of our game after 6 months, get free merch after 6 months, get free stickers every 3 months, get access to behind the scenes content, special channel just with the devs where we're already chatting with them. All kinds of
bi-weekly game nights with the devs where you get to play games with us. You guys get to choose the games we play. As long as they're not exorbitantly expensive, we'll buy them and we'll play them with you.
Unless it's the $200 COD Ultimate 500 gigabyte edition.
You could buy that for us.
Yeah, then we'll play with
Speaking
you.
Speaking of patrons, Evan, another patron.
The first ever subscriber, Mr. Koalatecular. Yeah, Evan was the first ever subscriber. Squid was the first Koala Manjaro subscriber.
There it is.
Yes, they get free merch. You also get access to behind-the-scenes content, especially as we get closer to releasing the game. That's going to be inside
really
looks.
Pay off.
Yeah, at us, like you're going to see some stuff on whatever music that we make. Maybe some like game audio sessions, recording sessions, mixing sessions, maybe even some game asset exploration kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of, just more personal, like vlogging. Have you ever wanted to watch Skylark cook the fucking crazy shit he posts? Yeah, it's perfect content for showing up on there too.
Yep.
All kinds of good stuff. But yes, as we get closer to the game, watch us, plan. It's almost like these like micro, maybe more personal Vidocs that as you sort of expect from other studios to assert a little bit. So our goal was to deliver tons of value. Even if you're a United States subscriber, you get seriously, just off of the merch, you get almost all of your money back as if you would have bought it directly.
We're trying to not screw you. Like, it's not to literally screw anyone over. We're trying to give you really good shit. So so we got a question from Evan. Actually, we'll end the podcast with this. I forgot. Evan gave us
And sorry to say, what we're about to read, Evan's question is part of his perks as a Patreon.
Actually, you read it so I don't show the channel on stream.
We answer one question a week on Quality Time from our patrons. And Evan's question this week was, what do you see the future of the video game market looking like in 10 years?
We got to make this quick, just so you know. No 20-minute discussion, but you go first and tell me what you see.
Yes. So I asked him, is there a specific part of the market that he wanted us to focus on? But he was saying kind of just general high level, like, would you ever straight out buy a game in the future 10 years from now? Is everything some weird subscription-based market? From my perspective, the gaming market, first of all, I think cloud gaming is eventually going to supplant like console gaming in large part
Final
for
Fantasy
the casual
VII
market.
gaming.
Yes, like once the technology backbone gets good enough, I think that's where the casual gamers are going to be. I do not ever think you will get away, like the dedicated PC market will ever go away. That is the high-end experience market, the premium market that will always be there. But I do think cloud gaming is going to largely come. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like, if you will, like a small Xboxy little box that only streams things. It's like kind of like a glorified Chromecast, if you will, that becomes commonplace in people's homes. But yes, I do think cloud is going to come up a lot. I think the subscription-based services are definitely going to continue to grow. I also think you're going to see innovations around how people can pay for these things. You're going to see some things like, maybe you can watch ads instead of paying outright for things. Kind of, innovations around how you can, reducing, right now, free to play is already so ubiquitous. Those models are already all over the place, but reducing the friction at the point of sale is something that they're just going to continue to explore and figure out how to do. Right. Yeah. So I think, those things. As to what, I think some other things are interesting to think about over the next 10 years, VR and augmented reality games.
If you're going to talk about gaming in the next 10 years, you got to talk about VR and AR. That's like coming up. There are a lot of experiences that people have made for VR and AR now that people think are very high quality experiences, but I still don't think they compare at all to the current modern gaming experience. And to make those lines intersect in the next 10 years, I think will be the main task of VR and AR game development. And I don't even know necessarily how that's going to be possible. There's major motion sickness issues that come into play when you're trying to do that. Maybe we need that Ready Player One shit. I don't know how you make that work.
I just think I'm not even confident that this will happen in the next 10 years for VR.
Either, yeah.
But I just think you still have, with the current experiences available, way too many moments where you're pulled out of the experience and you realize that you remember what technology you're in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The technology is still so much in your way of the experience, in my opinion. And I'm not feeling confident. Not to say it can't. I could see maybe at the tail end of 10 years it being close to something like that. But do I feel like eliminating motion sickness is impossible? Maybe for some people,
it's
but
not
generally
impossible
speaking,
from a physical. If you use physical mechanisms to offset it, but just using a VR headset, unless we have some sort of electrical impulse to the brain thing we come up with, where you could trick it, I don't think it's possible without some external physical mechanism, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I think you can do a lot more than we're doing now to make it better. Let me put it that way. But I agree. I think, there's a lot to figure out there. And I think the fact that you see Phil Spencer and the Microsoft team have talked about how part of the reason, PlayStation has VR, Xbox hasn't done it. And Phil Spencer continues to say that he just doesn't think VR is in a, I think the dedicated gamers, like they always already do, that segment of the market might continue to explore it further. But for the casual large audience, if you will, it needs to hit a point of convenience and immersion, easy to use, and great quality experience that is maybe farther than 10 years away. So I think VR has a bunch of insane potential in more integrated ways, larger scale environments. We've talked about those VR rec center things, Evan, in chat. That's a whole other category of things. But I just casual at home VR stuff. I don't know. To be super
I don't
compelling.
know when it'll get there either.
Yeah.
I think another big thing is using mobile devices to play actual video games coming through cloud-based gaming, and maybe some way to mount your mobile device on your TV or something, or so you don't need some sort of dedicated console to play a cloud-based game. I imagine in the next 10 years we'll have TVs, the Chrome TVs and the Apple TVs, but they're like they have the Xbox app on them that just streams games directly to the TV, so you don't need any external hardware, right?
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I could see I think it's in their business interest to make, if you will, an Xbox TV, a PlayStation TV, because you can also control the advertising channels through that. I would not be surprised that they just release like the Xbox TV, the Surface TV.
Totally. It would make sense.
And I do feel like there's going to be a reintegration, a repush onto somehow coalescing these experiences back into like physical meetups. So like, I don't know if that's like, you saw a little bit of it from the Microsoft Store stuff before COVID happened, but they were like, they were beefing up their like grassroots tournament experience, like trying to draw people into events, because there's a lot of like business reasons why that increases a fan's investment in the brand and stuff. When you have those experiences where you make friends and you play games together, I think you're going to see that come back to some extent.
I mean, it's coming back already through esports and stuff like that, right? Like people do that through esports. I don't think we're really talking about split screen gaming. We're talking about like esports arena, like LAN party-esque experiences, right?
Yeah, Josh is saying in chat, COVID killed it 100%. I mean, Microsoft Store literally is not a thing anymore because of COVID.
Right.
But just to say, I think at a macro level over the next decade, I think you'll see those start to come back as everyone figures those out.
Or we'll all just meet in VR and do it that way, right? Like, who knows?
I think also it's still sort of prototypey, but flexible displays could really change this mobile gaming dynamic. If I could play Halo on a device that was initially the size of my phone, but that folded up to the size of a screen of a laptop, right? Like that's
true.
That's way
I don't know
more
if that's in
compelling.
the next 10 years, but that's definitely coming. Yeah.
Another thing. Yeah. Oh, that's kind of hard to predict. So those are some.
All right. Yeah. That's our preliminary answer, but I got more for you, Evan, because next week on Koalatea Time, we're going to be talking about physical games, the decline of physical games, the demise of the physical gaming market. Is it demising? So that's going to have a lot more of this discussion on what games are starting to look like and what they'll continue to look like.
Yep, 100%.
So thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yep, thank you. Like I said,
Deuces.
Check out the Patreon. Lots of value there, and you can get your questions answered like Evan here. We will see you. Thank you so much.
Peace out. Goodbye. Play Limbo. This game's good. That's what my shirt is.
Yes.
Bye.